Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
All cash deals, rolled up Warhols, and concert cults. Plus this day in history with the Empire State Building plane crash and our song of the day by Matthew Deere on your Morning Monarchy for July 28th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com, and welcome to wherever you are. Good morning. Thank you so much for listening and joining us. Non-commercial alternative media brought to you by you online since 9/11/05. And a huge thanks to our latest patrons on patreon.com/MediaMonarchy. That's Innerverse and Nicolas P. Huge thanks to them. That gives us the support we need to keep going and growing, moving and grooving, my friends. It is a couple seconds after 9 a.m. coming to you, as always, from the Peak Portland, Oregon studios, the Media Monarchy studios. MediaMonarchy.com/listen is where we are streaming live. Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 Pacific time. Fridays are the media memes. That's the entertainment industrial complex. We got a lot of news to talk about, but of course, let's glance at the breaking Lamestream news, shall we? North Korea's Kim Jong-un got rained on during his parade. Pakistan's prime minister steps down after being disqualified by the court, and Senate rejects slimmed-down Obamacare repeal, the skinny repeal they were calling it. And what sunk it? Insane in the McCain. He voted no. FBI arrests husband in cruise ship death of wife, and Trump to highlight violence from MS-13. And we've been hearing some of those press conferences that we stream in the middle of the day here on the Media Monarchy stream. Now, what would it be without looking at the fact check? Fact-checking Trump's rally in Ohio. Beto O'Rourke claims near uniqueness in not taking corporate or PAC contributions. Is this kayaker paddling through a pod of orca whales? And George Clooney's baby boy peed in his face. Those are the important fact-check news from the Alphabet Incorporated. I even noticed the fact checks on all the other regular stories now. Even below, Senate rejects slim-down Obamacare repeal as McCain votes no. Fact check. Duffy on track on claim of 1,000-seat pickup by GOP since Obamacare. The other fact check, is it a felony to leak on a financial disclosure form, as Scaramucci said? Now, I hope you caught yesterday's Morning Monarchy as we talked about some of the esoteric background of the name Scaramucci. Eyes wide shut and all. Before we dive into our selected stories using hashtag media memes, and again, we are not only crowdfunded, we are crowdsourced. All our news is brought to you by you. Each morning show has a different hashtag. Monday's geopolitics, Tuesday's cyberspace war, Wednesday's food world order, Thursday is holy hexes, and Friday is media memes. All the stories we're going to talk about, we tweet out about an hour before showtime. So if you are listening live, and we love it when you do, you can follow along. One of the other breaking bits I saw in the Lamestream news is an interesting point. 300,000 artists making $20 million in the music industry's new gig economy. This piece on Forbes says that basically anybody with an iPad and a GarageBand can make beats, the ingredient of modern music. 300,000 artists in their garage bedrooms and condos are doing exactly that, some of them making hundreds of thousands of dollars selling short slices of music on a new Amazon for music mixes, Airbit. They talk to different producers, and it basically breaks down to $20 million, which means each producer on Airbit's making about $66. But there are other people, like Perps, who says he's made $12,000 from a single beat. Beats for cash, and that's how it'll go, and that's how it will continue to go in the new gig economy. Massive bands that have whole gangs of producers and all that stuff, it's going to go out of style. Now, I got a follow-up for a story we hit up a couple weeks ago. I believe it was a Holy Hexes edition of your Morning Monarchy, and the Holy Hexes sometimes leak into the media memes. Forensic experts in Spain have removed hair, nails, and 2 long bones from Salvador Dali's embalmed remains to aid a court-ordered paternity test that may enable a woman who says she's the surrealist artist's daughter to claim part of Dali's vast estate.
Forensic scientists have exhumed the body of the Spanish surrealist artist Salvador Dali to try and settle a paternity claim. When Dali died in 1989, aged 85, he was embalmed, so the operation to extract DNA from his teeth, nails and bones took just 4 hours, as his body's in a good condition. At last, we will be able to learn the truth. Whether she is the daughter or not, DNA can't lie. There is almost a 99% chance of knowing the truth. Maria Pilar Abel, who was born in Dali's hometown of Figueras, claims her mother had an affair with the painter and has been trying to prove she is his daughter for years. If she's proved right, she could assume part of the Dali estate, currently owned by the Spanish state. The exhumation from the domed theatre museum in Figueras went ahead despite the objections of the local authorities and the foundation carrying Dali's name.
Officials said last Friday that the artist's mummified remains were so well preserved that even his famous mustache had survived the passing of time and remained in its classic shape of 10 past 10, referring to hands on the clock. Dali, who once said surrealism is me, is considered one of the founding fathers of the artistic movement. His works in paint, sculpture, cinema, among other disciplines, are shown in museums all over the world and sought by private collectors. I can definitely say, when I went to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and you walk up these steps around a corner and a set of stairs, and you see Dali's Last Supper, and it's massive, and it takes up your entire field of vision. And it's got those hidden doves, and it's like, 2001 Jesus Last Supper. It's an amazing work, and to see it in real life, IRL, staring you right in the face, is pretty stunning. The artistic genius was buried in the Dali Museum Theater in the northeastern Spanish town of Figueras, his birthplace, when he died at 84 in 1989. The exhumation that began last Thursday night followed a long-standing claim by Pilar Abel, 61-year-old tarot card reader who says her mom had an affair with Dali in his hometown. In June, a Madrid judge finally ruled that a DNA test should be performed to find out whether her allegations were true. Forensic experts opened the artist's coffin in a sensitive operation that involved using pulleys to lift a 1.5-ton stone slab. That sounds very sensitive, very delicate. Luis Puñez Reyax, the Secretary General of the Gala Salvador Dali Foundation, said Dali's remains, including his mustache, are well preserved and mummified after an embalming process was applied 27 years ago. He spoke last Friday at a press conference. According to the local judicial authorities, only 5 people, a judge, 3 coroners, and an assistant, walk into a mortuary, were allowed to oversee the removal of the samples out of respect for the remains and in order to avoid any contamination. Representatives of the foundation, which manages Dali's estate on behalf of the Spanish state, said last Friday the evidence backing Abel's claims weren't enough to justify the intrusive exhumation. They vowed to continue a legal battle to nullify the paternity test. Dali and his Russian wife, Gala, had no children of their own, although Gala had a daughter from an earlier marriage to French poet Paul Éluard. Abel made her living by reading tarot cards on local TV. She was born in Girona, city close to Figueras. She said she was pressed for the exhumation because legal proof of Dali's paternity would honor the memory of her mother. If proved right, Abel could claim 1/4, a quarter of the painter's estate. According to her lawyer, Enrique Blanquez, there are no current estimates on the exact value of that, but as the Times-Union reports, it is certainly a fortune. And the headline, Exhumation of Dali's Remains finds his mustache is still intact. You know who else's mustache is still intact, at least in the iconic painting? Marxist revolutionary Che Guevara, who once said, "We cannot be sure of having something to live for unless we're willing to die for it." And clearly what he had in mind was versatile and contemporary rental space in Bristol, UK. According to a passerby's photo making the rounds on the tweets, a new mixed-use development called the Cigar Factory is using Guevara's famous image with added cigar and sunglasses to promote its available office space and apartments. The tagline, a revolutionary place to live and work. Predictably, this appropriation of the anti-capitalist icon is not going over so well on the social media halls. Bristol resident George Rowland snapped a picture of the outdoor ad promoting the location and described it on Twitter as the absolute worst marketing material for shitty luxury flats. The tweet exploded in popularity. 11,000 plus likes, 4,000 plus retweets in 2 days. WGH Properties is not the first company to make dubious use of the Argentine-born revolutionary's image. During a 2012 Consumer Electronics Show presentation, Mercedes-Benz chairman Dieter Zitsch introduced the company's new car-sharing program with the statement that some still think that car-sharing borders on communism. But if that's the case, viva la revolucion. Accompanying the statement was an image of Guevara with a Mercedes-Benz logo on his beret. As Mercedes-Benz discovered, the problem with invoking such a polarizing figure is that it angers both those opposed to appropriating his image and those offended by the figure himself. In the case of Mercedes-Benz, Daily Mail reported that anti-Castro activists started petitions against the company in protest. It's unclear if WGH has heard any direct complaints for its cigar factory billboard. Adweek, who we're grabbing this article from, reached out to the property for comment, but it's clearly struck a nerve with viewers on social media, bringing along plenty of negative attention and mockery. Negative attention and mockery. That is essentially what the internet is for you today. The source image for both the cigar factory's illustration and the Mercedes-Benz altered photo was the famous portrait of Guevara taken by Cuban photographer Alberto Diaz Corda Gutierrez. That photo became the subject itself of numerous lawsuits by Gutierrez and his daughter over its commercial use in advertising and PR campaigns, including a 2001 Smirnoff campaign. It is unclear if WGH obtained permission to use Guevara's likeness for the ad, but given the source photo's restricted licensing, that seems unlikely. Adweek claims they will continue to follow this story. And again, everything we say and play will always be included in the show notes, so you can continue to do more research for yourself. Follow up on these stories. I always feel like that's one of the main things that dinosaur media doesn't do. There's never a follow-up and there's very little context. Let's continue looking at media memes on your Morning Monarchy. Again, I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Viacom has informed Scripps Networks Interactive it is willing to pay all cash to acquire the U.S. TV network operator. The move by Viacom, which had $12.17 billion in debt as of March 31st, could potentially mean that the $14 billion media company would lose its investment-grade status to buy the $10 billion Scripps. Last year, Moody's downgraded Viacom's debt to the lowest level of investment grade, a status they would likely lose as a result of this deal.
Viacom told Scripps Networks it's willing to pay cash to... Sources tell Reuters it's going for Scripps' large female audience and content, including HGTV, Food Network, and Travel Channel. That programming could help Viacom put together a new cable bundle for less than $20 a month. It's not clear what the bid is valued at, but a deal could cost Viacom its investment-grade status. The company's debt is already at the lowest level of investment grade after Moody's downgrade last year. Viacom stock fell on the news. Scripps Networks was up. Reuters correspondent Jessica Tunkel says the all-cash offer is an aggressive move that surprised Wall Street.
Bondholders are likely not going to be very happy about this. But I think what Viacom is saying, we need to do something big. We need to be aggressive. We're in a turnaround strategy right now. So this deal is going to help us turn around in the long run. We're going to see cost synergies and such. So they're willing to go over 5 times leverage to do this deal.
Viacom is competing against Discovery Communications in bidding for Scripps, but Discovery is not expected to make an all-cash offer. Sources say Scripps will make its choice within the next few days.
Viacom is bidding for Scripps, which owns channels such as HGTV, Food Network, and the Travel Channel. They're bidding against, as was just said, Discovery Communications, which is not expected to make an all-cash bid. It's not clear what the bids were valued at or whether Viacom or Discovery has won the bidding for Scripps, but a decision was expected within the next few days. This is one of those articles where essentially we think this thing might be happening, but no one's allowed to talk about it and no one's saying anything, but we'll keep you published, keep you posted, keep you updated. I maybe mentioned before Songza. Did you ever use Songza? It's one of the numerous streaming music platforms that does things in a slightly different way than other platforms do. It was curated playlists, created, I was told, by music professionals, that knew what time it was, where you were, and it was like, oh, it's 9 in the morning. Do you want your morning workout music? Do you want your commute music? Do you want your, I just worked all night and I need to go to bed? It would give you these different scenarios. Here's the music for cooking dinner. Here's the music for working out. Here's the music for driving, or whatever. It was pretty cool. It had a nice, clean interface. Then Google bought it. And much like they do, and much like Microsoft does, much like Facebook does, when they buy up the competition, they usually let it die on the vine. So Songza has been killed, and they merged it into Google Play. You may have also heard of YouTube Red. Well, guess what's going to happen with those two? Google Play and YouTube Red will be merged to create a new streaming service, according to a report from The Verge, with Google then essentially confirmed with a statement indicating that changes are not taking place immediately. No, of course changes won't take place immediately. They'll be slowly and painfully rolled out. The company said that users would receive plenty of notice before any changes were made, noted it was still in the process of evaluating how to best bring its music offerings together. The Verge report was originally based on comments made by YouTube executive Lee R. Cohen at the New Music Seminar Conference in New York, where he stated that the important thing is combining YouTube Red and Google Play Music and having one offering. Any kind of music fan or business watcher, you've seen the very imposing figure of Lee R. Cohen. He looks like a giant kind of movie bad guy. Music's very important to Google, and we're evaluating how to bring together our music offerings to deliver the best possible product for our users, music partners, and artists. Nothing will change for users today, and we'll provide plenty of notice before any changes are made. YouTube Red and Google Play are already tied together. According to the YouTube Red website, a Red subscription includes a free subscription to Google Play Music. YouTube Red, if you haven't been bugged by the little pop-ups and things, is essentially YouTube's ad-free subscription service. I think the only thing that makes it interesting to me is on the Fondle slab. If you do the YouTube Red account, I think you can sort of navigate away from the YouTube app and the videos will continue to play. It's one of the only downsides to using the YouTube app. You have to leave it in that app for the videos and things to continue to play. That's about the only reason I would ever consider a YouTube Red account, which I'm not really. Existing Google Play subscribers also receive a free YouTube Red membership. It's been that way since day one, but it's possible subscribers aren't aware of the added bonus. And I think they're about to, in this TechCrunch article, YouTube service is accessible via its main YouTube app, where you can search for music videos and enjoy Red's background play and offline listening features. Background play, that's the thing I wanted. It would make sense for Google to combine YouTube's music videos and Google Play's music audio into one property, given that its rivals already do the same thing. Apple Music and Spotify both integrate video into their own apps, and Google has extensive music video collection thanks to YouTube, potentially giving it that big advantage. The company did not, however, say that that was the plan. Meanwhile, others are speculating that the merger could be more of a rebranding story akin to something like Amazon Prime. And Soylent Perp in the chat says, Google Play will destroy everything you love. And indeed they will. And continuing to destroy things you love, the iPod Nano going down. Apple discontinues iPod Nano and Shuffle. You can keep Baby Driver is bringing the iPod back, think pieces. Tim Cook does not give a fuck. Despite how cute all the Ansel Elgort characters' customized iPod classics were in Edgar Wright's hit action comedy blockbuster, which everyone I've talked to has said is hugely disappointing. Has anybody seen Baby Driver? I was actually kind of shocked and perhaps appalled that it's Edgar Wright. Yeah, I don't think I've talked to a person who's seen it and said, yeah, it's really great. Everybody says, yeah, it's really disappointing. There's no way that kid could actually carry the movie. He's not good enough for all the things they put on top of him. That's sidebar movie review. Apple's continuing to cut back on its production of the music players, which are increasingly just ambiguous non-phone, non-tablet, non-laptop thingies that do most but not all the things that the other three do. I still have my iPod Nano. If you actually were listening to yesterday's Pump Up the Volume episode, or maybe 2 days ago, it messed up. My iPod Nano, it is a first-gen 4-gig iPod Nano. It's very cute. It's the old click wheel classic. But it occasionally bricks out. You hit the button and it's just a blank white screen. At which point I basically have to give it a few minutes and it'll slowly kind of come back to life. I used to play a lot of Vortex on the click wheel games as well. So I like having my iPod Nano. I basically use it for music beds. It's just loaded with Beastie Boys and Twilight Circus Dub Sound System. Twilight Circus Dub Sound System, aka Ryan Moore, is the provider of all of your morning Monarchy background music. Huge thanks to Twilight Circus. According to Bloomberg, Apple said that it's simplifying its iPod selection to just iPod Touch models at 32 gigs and 128 gigs at $199 and $299, respectively. The cost-effective and streamlined Nano and Shuffle will now become collector's items. Apple had previously discontinued their iconic iPod Classic models in 2014, the click wheel having become as passé as a full keyboard on your cell phone. Since most people don't even have hard copy MP3s to their name anymore, thanks also for that, Apple, the discontinuation makes sense. Isn't that interesting? We've talked about this. Feels like another nail in the coffin of the world's future population having any way to possess music apart from the loads of other content and stimuli they stream and surf through online on a daily basis. No one has any music. No one will have any collections of anything. And that's, I think, what's another reason that makes our next story really interesting. These are the kind of the fun stories you like to see in the news. Rock star Alice Cooper has found an Andy Warhol masterpiece that could be worth millions, rolled up in a tube in a storage locker for 40 years. The work in question is a red, little electric chair silkscreen from Warhol's Death and Disaster series. Never stretched on a frame, it sat in storage alongside touring artifacts, including an electric chair that Alice Cooper used in the early 70s as part of his ghoulish stage show. According to Shep Gordon, Alice Cooper's longtime manager, Alice Cooper and Andy Warhol became friends at the famous Max's Kansas City venue in New York City. It was back in '72, and Alice had moved to New York with his girlfriend Cindy Lang, Gordon told The Guardian. Andy was kind of a groupie, and so was Alice. They loved famous people, so they started a relationship, and they loved to hang out. Warhol went to see a concert in which Cooper feigned electrocution in a chair identical to the one in Warhol's print. The image is based on the press photograph from the January 13th, 1953 death chamber at Sing Sing Prison in Ossining, New York, where, of course, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were executed that year for conspiring to pass atomic secrets to the Russians. Lang, a model and Interview magazine cover star who died in January at the age of 67, had the idea to approach the artist's studio and purchase one of the 1964 canvases. As I recall, Cindy came to me for the $2,500 painting. At the time, Alice is making 2 albums a year, touring the rest of the time. It was a rock and roll time. None of us thought about anything. He ends up going into an insane asylum for his drinking and then leaves New York for L.A. Alice says he remembers having a conversation with Warhol about the picture. He thinks the conversation was real, but he couldn't put his hand on a Bible and say that it was. The artwork entered Cooper's touring equipment collection and disappeared. Then, 4 years ago, Shep Gordon was having dinner with a Los Angeles art dealer, Ruth Bloom. She mentioned how much a Warhol had recently fetched at auction. Gordon mentioned that Cooper had a little electric chair. Bloom advised him to find it. Alice's mother remembered it going into storage, so we went up and found it rolled in a tube. Shep Gordon himself is the subject of Mike Myers' 2014 documentary Supermensch, The Legend of Shep Gordon, that's on my to-watch stack, suggested his client hang the work at home, but the singer demurred. The top price paid for a little electric chair is $11.6 million at Christie's in November 2015 for a green version dated '64. And he didn't want anything of such value in the house, so it went back in storage. Without authentication, it is unsigned. Cooper's Warhol is unlikely to make quite so much should it ever come into auction, because it's not validated, it's not authenticated. We've talked about this before. We talk about comic books. Oh, how do I get a certificate of authenticity of my autographed comic book? Take a picture of yourself with the guy autographing it. The Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts stopped authenticating work in 2011 after a protracted legal dispute over a self-portrait owned by British collector Joe Simon that the authentication panel refused to endorse, rendering it valueless. Gordon took Alice Cooper's small canvas, which measures 22 by 28 inches, to Richard Polsky, a Warhol expert who recently published an addendum to the Warhol catalog raisonné. He believes the provenance of the silkscreen checks out and has it dated 64-65. I'm 100%, Polsky told The Guardian. It looks right, and the story just makes too much sense. It's hard to appreciate how little Warhol's art was worth at the time. $2,500 was the going rate. Why would Andy give him a fake? He had plenty of electric chairs. They were not an easy sell. They weren't decorative in the conventional sense. It's a brutal image. Gordon said the singer changed his mind and was now considering hanging his little electric chair in his home when he comes off tour at the end of the year. Truthfully, at the time, no one thought it had any real value. Andy Warhol was not Andy Warhol back then. And it was all a swirl of drugs and drinking, but you should have seen Alice's face when Richard Polsky's estimate came in. His jaw dropped and he looked at me. Are you serious? I own that? We found it rolled up in a tube. Alice Cooper discovers a Warhol classic 40 years later. And I was actually pretty stunned. About a year ago, there was a pretty good Andy Warhol display here at the Portland Art Museum. You are listening to The Morning Monarchy for Friday, July 28th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, giving you a look at the entertainment industrial complex as we do every Friday. And I don't know if Jay Dyer's on this, but the latest Cage meme is no laughing matter, according to the highly suspect Human Rights Foundation. Photos of Nicolas Cage dressed in traditional nomadic garb in Astana, Kazakhstan, attending the Eurasian Film Festival have gone viral, with several memes on the internet that drop the actor into other famous historical photos, including one that has him standing with Nixon and Elvis at the White House. But it is no laughing matter, says a human rights group taking Cage to task for ginning up positive press coverage for an authoritarian regime. During his 26-year rule over Kazakhstan, President Nursultan Nazarbayev shut down independent news outlets, arrested critics, including journalists and a theater director. In 2011, government forces killed more than a dozen peaceful protesters during the Zanozin massacre. The group famous for smuggling copies of The Interview into North Korea to embarrass Kim Jong-un. Is Astana a New World Order city in Kazakhstan? This is news to me. You have to follow up on that for me. Despite the reported violations of human rights, Nicolas Cage appeared at the festival as a VIP guest, leading some to believe he either endorses the leadership or allowed himself to be used as a public relations pawn. I would be pleased to participate in some film project on the territory of Kazakhstan, Cage told journalists while attending the festival. I enjoyed the architecture of your capital. What I saw reminded me of an old black and white film that depicted the future. All of this was much too much for Human Rights President Thor Halvorsen, who is set to issue a press release to journalists worldwide criticizing Nicolas Cage. His glowing review gave Kazakhstan's dictatorship much-needed PR, and his photos boosted the regime's visibility on the international stage. The photo getting the most attention features a stoic Cage in a fancy, full-length coat and furry hat standing beside festival president, though in internet memes, she's sometimes misidentified as the First Lady. Cage should be mortified that he participated in a whitewashing stunt for a murderous tyrant. So I do have some follow-ups for you. Freeman apparently covered Astana many moons ago, and there's a link on Vigilant Citizen. Sinister Sights, Astana, Kazakhstan. So we will have to follow up on that one a little bit later. And again, that's what makes these shows work. It's a lot of ways in how New World Next Week works. I can find the news, but I might need you guys to help analyze it for me. Especially if it's got to do with Star Wars. If we ever needed a timely reminder that in the world of academic publishing, not all scientific journals are created equal, and now we have another timely reminder. To test just how low the quality bar is for exploitative predatory journals, a prominent neuroscientist has tricked 4 publications into accepting a totally fake paper about midichlorians, an entirely fictional life form in Star Wars that makes the Force possible. Neuroskeptic, a working neuroscientist who anonymously blogs about science for Discover, set up the sting, submitting the nonsensical study to 9 scientific journals, and 4 of them accepted it. The journals approached are among those sometimes described as predatory in science circles because they exploit researchers into paying fees to have their papers published in them. But in this case, 3 of the publications just went ahead and published the fake paper straight up, clearly not having read or checked it first, even without requiring a payment of fee. Another one, the American Journal of Medical and Biological Research, also accepted the paper, but they needed $360. I wonder if the ones just went ahead with it because it's like, dude, it's Star Wars. Everybody loves it. This will be boffo box office for us. The absurd thing, as a neuroskeptic explains, is the average human being would only need about 5 minutes or less with the paper to see that it's entirely bogus and riddled with inexplicable Star Wars references. For a start, it's written by none other than the decidedly fishy-looking Dr. Lucas McGeorge and Dr. Annette Ken, and while at a very quick scan it might pass for a chemistry discussion, that's only because neuroskeptics scrapped the content of the Wikipedia page on mitochondrion, real, and reworded it, changing references to midichlorian, not so real. To make things further obvious, just in case any peer reviewers working for the publication were actually paying attention, Neuroskeptic dropped in entire passages ripped off wholesale from Star Wars, inserting them not so subtly into the text. Midichlorians mediated oxidative stress causes cardiomyopathy in type 2 diabetics. As more fatty acids are delivered into the heart and into cardiomyocytosis, the oxidation of fatty acids in these cells increase. Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plague the Wise? I thought not. It is not a story the Jedi would tell you. It was a Sith legend. Darth Plagueis was a dark lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life. The crisis of science goes on, paging James Corbett of the Corbett Report. Yes. These are not the science journals you are looking for. And now here's Maduro with a political remix.
Que tenemos una canción que hizo un grupo de creadores. Vamos a verla, yo no la he visto.
When politicians try to pass themselves off as pop stars. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's attempt to use Latin hit Despacito to inject some cool into his controversial new Congress has backfired.
Constituyente va, ejerce tu voto.
Maduro's unpopular leftist government released a remixed version to encourage Venezuelans to vote for the Constituent Assembly, which will have powers to rewrite the national charter and supersede other institutions. A grinning and clapping Maduro called out to the crowd, which responded in approval. But it hasn't gone down well with Puerto Rican singers Luis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee, who've said they don't approve at all. Millions of Venezuelans have been staging months of protests against Maduro, a former bus driver and union leader, narrowly elected to replace the late Hugo Chavez in 2013.
And now, with round-the-clock updates from Reuters journalists.
The alternative media, Jerry. That's where you hear the truth.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's attempt to use Latin hit Despacito, which means slowly, to inject some cool into his new Congress backfired. Maduro's unpopular leftist government on Sunday promoted a remix version of Despacito to encourage Venezuelans to vote for the Constituent Assembly, which will have powers to rewrite the national charter and supersede other institutions. We have been talking about what's going on in Venezuela many, many times, many, many days, many, many weeks. And what do you do when you need to drill something into the minds of the people? Oh, you do a little dance remix. Get the pop stars to join in. And I think that's one of those songs that I believe is breaking records. I think it has some record-setting run on the top of the charts. And like most pop music, it's written by an entire gang of producers and features like 5 other extra singers. And I think it also includes some kid who actually just ran over a paparazzo while trying to leave a church meeting in Beverly Hills. That's right, the Biebs.
Yeah, what can we do?
Heal and bless him, Lord.
Call an ambulance.
Heal and bless him or call an ambulance.
Get out the way, man. Healing, Lord. 3 hours. Healing.
Wow. Is there anything we can do?
Healing and blessing in the name of Jesus.
We called it already, man.
I can just feel it.
Okay. Did Cardin run over you?
7.5 healing in the name of Jesus.
Sorry, ran all the way over you.
His leg got caught in the tire.
Where did it get
caught? We speak peace, Lord. Peace in the name of Jesus. Peace.
This is the strangest bit of footage.
If you could just give us a little space, okay?
That's Bieber talking, asking for space to help the guy he just ran over with his gigantic Range Rover thing.
Back up, guys. Back up. Back up. Just a little bit.
So he runs over a guy. And then the camera cuts to they're all outside, and there's Bieber in his sports gear and hats and junk, leaning over the guy. It looks so strange because he doesn't look as though he lives in any sort of real world. He basically looks like, oh, now I'm doing this thing. I'll act like I have some sort of compassion or interest in this situation. It's very strange, very bizarre. Paparazzo run over by a truck driven by singer Justin Bieber outside the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills. I believe the Biebs has quite the record of being a terrible driver and being arrested, and it's tough growing up in the public spotlight, right? You're listening to The Morning Monarchy. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Fridays are Media Memes, the entertainment industrial complex, and it seems like they generally have a good run of obituaries anymore. June Foray, the voice of Rocky and Bullwinkle's Rocky the Flying Squirrel, and his nemesis Natasha Fatale of Boris and Natasha fame in the early 60s, and a key figure in the animation industry. She died yesterday at the age of 99. Her close friend David Nimitz confirmed her death on Facebook, writing, "With a heavy heart again, I want to let you all know that we lost our little June today at 99 years old." June Foray was also the voice behind Looney Tunes' Witch Hazel, Nell from Dudley Do-Right, Granny in the Tweety and Sylvester cartoons, and Cindy Lou Who in Chuck Jones' How the Grinch Stole Christmas, among hundreds of others. The first lady of voice acting, one of the original members of animation organization ASIFA Hollywood, and a founder of the annual Annie Awards. She was also instrumental in the creation of the Oscars animated feature category. So that is obituary the first on this episode. And our obituary the second. Barbara Sinatra, fourth and final wife of legendary singer Frank Sinatra, and a prominent children's advocate and philanthropist who raised millions of dollars to help abused youngsters, died Tuesday at the age of 90. Barbara Sinatra died of natural causes at her Rancho Mirage, California home, surrounded by friends and family, so said John Thorson, director of the Barbara Sinatra Children's Center. With Frank's help, she founded a nonprofit center in Rancho Mirage in '86 to provide therapy and other support to young victims of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. In the years since, more than 20,000 kids have been treated at the center and hundreds of thousands more worldwide through the videos it provides. A former model and Las Vegas showgirl, Barbara Sinatra was a prominent Palm Springs socialite in her own right before married Frank Sinatra in 1976 when she was 60, or rather he was 60 and she was 49. They were together until his death at the age of 82 in 1998. It was her third marriage, Sinatra's fourth, and their longest marriage between the both of them. She met Sinatra through her second husband, Zeppo Marx of the famous Marx Brothers comedy team. The couple had been close friends and neighbors with Sinatra in Rancho Mirage until she left Zeppo for Frank Sinatra in 1973. Now our obituary the third. John Hurd, beloved star of several huge 80s and 90s movies, died a week ago, last Friday in Palo Alto. John Hurd was found dead in a hotel by the maid service, as was the style at the time. This according to family sources. Police were called to the hotel to report a medical emergency. He was pronounced dead on the scene. Coroner's investigating, cause of death unclear at this time, but they do not suspect foul play. The interesting part of this, according to his representative, John Hurd had had minor back surgery Wednesday at the Stanford Medical Center and was staying at the hotel while he recovered. He is, of course, the dad in the Home Alone movies. He's also in Big, Beaches, Gladiator, Pelican Brief, Miami Vice, Sopranos, Sharknado. Is this another situation where, would you like to get sick? Please go to the hospital. Would you like to get dumb? Please go to school. You want to get poor? Go to the bank. You want to learn how to be a criminal? Go to prison. You want to get sick? Go to the hospital. So those are your three obituaries on this Media Memes edition. And all your music are belong to us. We've talked about the concert cults this last year and a half, probably. And we've definitely talked about how someone like Chance the Rapper has definitely been absorbed into the pop culture maw. When Warren Buffett and Bill Clinton start to show up at your concerts, you know something's up. Then you got to do some Kit Kat commercials. More than 90 people were hospitalized during a concert last Friday night featuring Chance the Rapper in Hartford, Connecticut. Many were taken to hospitals for excessive drinking. Hartford Deputy Chief Brian Foley said Saturday that officers made 50 underage drinking referrals at Hot 93.7's Hot Jam concert at the Xfinity Theater. Most of those charged were issued a summons to appear in court. Several other arrests were made throughout the evening. The crowd was apparently made up of people in their late teens and early 20s. Tailgating, partying, and excessive alcohol consumption was extremely prevalent. This is funny to listen to the Associated Press talk about. Apparently, groups of people like to get together and listen to loud music and imbibe. Strange cultures these humans take part in. Foley said a large number of people hospitalized were underage attendees experiencing severe intoxication. Hartford Fire Captain Raul Ortiz told the Hartford Courant that there were so many patients that some had to be taken to hospitals outside Hartford for treatment. One 19-year-old had a blood alcohol content of nearly 0.5, 8 times the legal limit for driving. John Brancato, assistant director of the Pediatric Emergency Department at Connecticut's Children's Medical Center in Hartford, told the newspaper the young man was admitted to the intensive care unit for close monitoring. Other artists performing at the concert were Kyle, P&B Rock, and Anoid. There's about 21,000 people attending the concert. So that sounds like one of those situations where they were basically making a ton of money just selling hand over fist of booze. I've maybe made the joke about one of the festivals here. It's coming up next month. Project Pabst, of course, brought to you by the beer company. It's a big outdoor festival. It takes place in hot concrete in the middle of August, and it's kind of excruciating, but we've seen some pretty good shows there. You know, when you go to certain places and you maybe walk up to the bar and say, hey, can I have 2 drinks? They'll say, I can only serve you 1. Who's the other one for? Not the case at the Project Pabst. You can walk up and go, 3 beers, please, and they'll go, here you go, buddy. No, that's not true. I can get drunk on some Pabst. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy as we're starting to wind down our Media Memes edition. Looking at the entertainment industrial complex back in 2013. We'll start to wrap up with some concert cults. Arcade Fire faced criticism for requesting that their audience members adhere to a dress code at some of their North American shows. They backtrack at the time, saying it was super not mandatory. But now they're back at it again with a seemingly pretty strict dress code for their Everything Now release show that happened last night and was to be live streamed on Apple Music. Per Brooklyn Vegan music website, a message was recently sent out to attendees of the show who had to apply for tickets and answer the question, what do you like about the first single from the new album? And this message laid out the show's dress code, which is described as hip and trendy as if you're going to a concert or a night out with friends. They reserve the right to deny entry to anyone that doesn't dress up to their standards. Please do not wear shorts, large logos, flip-flops, tank tops, cross tops, crop tops, baseball hats, solid white or red clothing. The message states, in full, it is a phone-free viewing experience. No cell phones, cameras, or recording devices will be allowed on the show. Upon arrival, all phones and smartwatches will be secured in Yonder pouches, Y-O-N-D-R, that will be unlocked at the end of the show. Guests maintain possession of their phones throughout the night and, if needed, may access their phones at designated Yonder unlocking stations in the lobby. So aside from dress codes, we also learn about something called Yonder. Now, I remember back at the FM station when our program director got to go to a big special show where they were playing the new Mumford & Sons album. And you go in and they would take your phones and you can't have any documentation, any of that stuff. And I think you got like a little nice pouch and bag when they gave you your phone back. This Yonder pouch basically sounds like it's something you can lock up the phone. You still have the device, but you can't get it back out. I like the idea of unlocking stations. So that's, I guess you could leave the concert hall, go out to the unlocking station and open your phone and be able to check it and then lock it back up and go. So technology-wise, kind of interesting. Now this turned into a big fight. Arcade Fire essentially trying to blame Apple Music for all these things and say, no, these aren't our dress codes. But guess what, Arcade Fire? You lose the right to argue about these things when you sell out to Columbia Records and Sony. You were always an indie band before that. You used to be able to have control over these sorts of things. But when you willingly jump into the gaping maw of multinational corporate media companies, sorry, you're going to lose all that. Pretty sure Merge Records wouldn't have made you go through this stuff, but that's what you do. So while you guys are hating on Arcade Fire and Mumford & Sons and all the shitty adult alternative bands over in the chat, we'll start to wrap up this episode with a quick note about the Mercury Prize. Now, the Mercury Prize, for the longest time, has been the UK sort of good music awards. And they basically pick a dozen or so albums that they shortlist. And then, of course, they have sort of their best new album. The new batch is pretty unexciting, and even The Guardian saying 2017 Mercury shortlist fails to spotlight truly exciting British music. And they're not real happy that it has people like Ed Sheeran on the list. Ed Sheeran pretty much typifying the exact sort of thing that never would have shown up on the Mercury Prize. So much like everything, mission creep, and you got to appeal to everybody, everywhere, all the time. So the full Mercury Prize 2017 shortlist is the new Alt-J record, The Big Moon, Blossoms, Lloyd Carner, Dinosaur, Glass Animals, J Hus, Sampha, who we've played for you on Pump Up the Volume, Ed Sheeran, Stormzy, who we've played for you on Pump Up the Volume, Kate Tempest, who we've played for you on Pump Up the Volume, and the XX, who we've played for you on Pump Up the Volume. If I could guess at that list, I might bet a milkshake that Kate Tempest will win it. Let Them Eat Chaos is a pretty good record. She's kind of like a female Mike Skinner. So as long as we're talking about new music, let's take a quick glance at new music coming out today, Friday being Global Release Day. And that's right, the new Arcade Fire record comes out, and even AllMusic says the Canadian indie rock collective opts for style over substance on its disco-friendly fifth effort, which features a dream team of producers. Pretty much sounds like everything I make fun of. Hey, but one of those producers are one of the guys from Pulp, so I like that. So that new Arcade Fire record comes out today on Columbia Records on a very big major label. There's also reissues from Elvis and the Cars out today. Something new from the Isley Brothers. New hip-hop from Vic Mensa, and see a lot of things just sort of completely unnecessary in the media world, such as Death Cab for Cutie frontman's entire album cover of Teenage Fan Club's 1991 debut album Bandwagonesque. Ben Gibbard's Bandwagonesque. A lovingly executed re-recording of Teenage Fan Club's classic 1991 album. As I have said on these shows before, I wouldn't be surprised if Death Cab broke up soon. I also wouldn't be surprised if Decemberists broke up soon. I've seen them both personally in private shows and stuff around the radio station, and you get that impression where it's like, oh, you guys don't like each other anymore. There's also music out today from Golden Retriever, the Pet Shop Boys, new old music from Jerry Garcia and Merle Saunders, and again, everything we say and play will always be included in the show notes, just as all those stories we talked about can be all linked up, and you can learn more about them and do more research. We're going to go out with brand new music from shape-shifting experimental dance music auteur Matthew Deere as we wrap up this episode, but of course, let's take a look at this day in history, my friends. Past is prologue. July 28th, 1917. It's the Google Doodle today. The Silent Parade took place in New York City in protest to murders, lynchings, and other violence directed towards African Americans. July 28th, 1932, U.S. President Hubert Heaver orders the United States Army to forcibly evict the bonus army of World War I veterans gathered in Washington, D.C., paging Smedley Butler. July 28th, 1933, the first singing telegram was sent, and it was sent to birthday boy Rudy Valley on his 32nd birthday. July 28th, 1939, Judy Garland recorded Over the Rainbow on this day. And July 28th, 1945, a United States military plane crashes into the Empire State Building on this day in 1945, killing 14 people, and the freak accident was caused by heavy fog.
At the corner of 5th Avenue and 34th Street in the center of New York's shopping district stands the world's tallest building, 1,248 feet high, the Empire State Building. It's a gigantic place filled with offices and workers, almost a business city on its own. A building with express lifts and wonderful views that attract all visitors. This was the scene of the recent plane crash. It happened when workers were at their desks on a Saturday morning between 9 and 10 o'clock. Miles away, a Mitchell bomber had taken off from Bedford, Massachusetts. The pilot, flying over LaGuardia airfield, was advised to land because of fog. But he headed for Newark instead, along what he thought was this route. The route he actually took led him straight through the fog into the Empire State Building. crashed into the 78th and 79th stories at a speed of about 200 miles an hour. It smashed through 7 walls. Blazing petrol set 11 stories of the building on fire. No one knew what had happened. The wildest rumors spread through New York, but firemen were on the job, and in very quick time they had the fires out. "13 lives, in addition to those of the crew of 3, were lost instantly. Many others received burns, injuries, and shock. One body was found on a ledge 7 stories down. The scene, in fact, both in the building and in the street, was reminiscent of an incident in a blitz. The death roll, tragic as it was, seemed miraculously small. One of the plane's props was found embedded in the wall. One of the lifts plunged down 80 floors. One of the Mitchell's engines crashed almost 1,000 feet below. The other hurtled across the building and fell on the penthouse on the roof of a 12-story building in the next street. Other parts of the bomber crashed into the busy 34th Street, yet no one down there was injured. Here it also looked like an incident, but 2 days later the Empire State Building was open again. Business as usual, in fact.
And now for more, here's a midget in a bikini. It does kind of sound like Trey Parker, but that's probably where Trey Parker got the idea and the style of those old newsreels. A U.S. Army B-25 bomber crashes into the 79th floor of the Empire State Building on this day, killing 14, injuring 26, and collapsing into its own footprint in aerosolized dust. Oh, wait, that didn't happen. Continuing to look at this day in history. July 28th, 1965. Hey, LBJ announces his order to increase the number of United States troops in South Vietnam from 75,000 to 125,000. July 28, 1973, the Summer Jam Rock Festival took place in Watkins Glen, New York. About 600,000 people watched the Dead, the Allman Brothers, and the band perform. The event actually got a Guinness Book of World Records entry for largest audience at a pop festival. Summer Jam on this day in 1973. July 28, 1987, the Beatles sued Nike and Capitol over their use of the song Revolution in shoe commercials, but of course much later they would willingly sell their songs to commercials. July 28, 1996, the remains of a prehistoric man are discovered near Kennewick, Washington. Such remains will be known as the Kennewick Man. For more on that, you can go to Clyde Lewis. Finally, July 28, 2000, a federal appeals court, a U.S. federal appeals court, granted a last-minute stay of an injunction that ordered Napster Incorporated to shut down. The order to stop operations came on July 26th, as we just reported for you 2 days earlier on this day in history on the Wednesday show. Published to Media Monarchy a decade ago today, Vice President Dick Cheney will undergo minor surgery Saturday morning to replace the battery that powers a device implanted in his chest 6 years ago to monitor his heart and deliver a shock if it ever goes out of rhythm. Published to Media Monarchy a decade ago, today, Darth Cheney gets his batteries replaced. Celebrating birthdays, July 28th, Beatrix Potter, Peter Rabbit. It's also bullshit artist Marcel Duchamp's birthday and the aforementioned Rudy Valley. It's also famed comic illustrator Dick Sprang. He pretty much remodeled the Batmobile. He did a lot of the early Batman work. Dick Sprang, born on this day. It's also Frankie Yankovic's birthday. Jackie O, Junior Kimbrough, Mike Bloomfield, Bill Bradley, of course, sports star and politician, that rare breed. The late, great Richard Wright from Pink Floyd, born on this day. Garfield creator Jim Davis, Sally Struthers, Devo's Jerry Casale. It's also Rachel Sweet, Lori Loughlin, Jimmy Pardo's birthday. Greek Prime Minister stud Alexis Tsipras, born on this day. And yes, Jesse Spano. Elizabeth Berkley, born on this day. Cassie and I talked for a second this morning about Showgirls. It was like, so I guess Showgirls ruined her career? I was like, I don't know that she was going to have that great a career. Anyway, however, Woody Allen did put her in Curse of the Jade Scorpion. Also born on this day, 40 years ago, our good friend Swagger Prance. Huge, huge happy birthday to our friend Swagger Prance. Thanks to her for all her help and support of the Media Monarchy Kingdom. And the last birthday for you, Soldier Boy. Hey! Those are all our birthdays, and none of them will make their way into our daily DJ set at noon because it'll be a New Music Friday. And to wet that new music whistle, brand new music from Matthew Deere. Written in Topanga Canyon with Frank Ocean collaborator Troy Noga, Modafinil Blues highlights Matthew Deere's delicious baritone and delves into dark and playful psyche. Modafinil Blues from Matthew Deere, our song of the day as we wrap up your morning monarchy for Friday, July 28th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, thanking you guys so much for listening and taking part and being activated. And reminding you, as always, like Jello Biafra said, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
I'll be straight.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.